Welcome back, everyone. This is our third class on sort of a brief involvement in the life and teachings of Vimalakirti. Just before we begin, just a couple of quick announcements. Tomorrow night there'll be full moon and loving kindness meditation beginning at 7:30. That's in person and online. And then Saturday morning there'll be a work day and there'll be interviews during the work day like there will be on Thursday night. So I believe the prior two were recorded, and I believe everybody has access to the recordings. But the drama of Vimalakirti is now going to really get cooking. We've sort of met the Buddha. We sort of know that this about a Buddha field. We know that not everybody sees this realm as a Buddha field, except Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But every now and then, someone will touch their toe to the earth, and we'll have a brief moment of clarity of what's really going on here. And so again, we began in the pleasure garden that was donated to the Buddha and his followers, great conclave of bodhisattvas, enlightened beings, a couple of human beings thrown in. We met Vimalakirti, manifesting as a different kind of bodhisattva. Not a bodhisattva in his own very clear, pure realm, or not only associating with other great bodhisattvas and masters, but he lived in a city, in an urban dwelling, and we know that he fully participated in all the activities of so-called worldly life, and yet he was a great bodhisattva, and the city of Vasali was his Buddha field for purifying the minds of sentient beings. And then we know that he was manifesting sickness, illness, and as he was a good friend of the Buddha was asking his disciples and the Bodhisattva, would somebody please call on him, Vimalakirti, find out how he's doing. And we know everybody bowed out. And again, in their bowing out, we learned a lot about the kind of teaching that Vimalakirti lived, and that he was fearless in always trying to kind of, no matter where anybody was trying to take a stand, he pulled out the rug from under them. He was a great teacher. So now we're in chapter 5. So the Buddha, now having exhausted all the great disciples, exhausted all the great bodhisattvas, he now turns to the prince of bodhisattvas, Manjusri, who is the bodhisattva of wisdom. And he says, Manjusri, please go to the Lachavi Vimalakirti and inquire about his illness. And Manjusri says, Lord, it's difficult to attend upon him. He has marvelous eloquence. He is skillful in the full expressions. Nobody can resist his imperturbable intellect. He accomplishes all the activities of the Bodhisattva. He's skilled in civilizing all the abodes of devils. I mean, such great terms, He doesn't shy away from the abodes of devils. He goes there and he civilizes them. I like that term. He is consummate in wisdom and liberative technique, supreme in all the way, can teach the Dharma with all its infinite modalities, skillful in all ways. He has attained decisiveness with regard to all questions. That's quite a phrase, isn't it? No matter what question was asked him, his answers were never tentative. They were always decisive. Now, why were they decisive? Because he was a fully liberated being in which all the natural intuitive wisdom and the prajna wisdom and all the skillfulness of liberative techniques were just naturally manifesting him. So he could easily respond to all situations decisively. He didn't wobble, he didn't waver. He didn't say could be, couldn't be. He was very clear in his ability to read the minds of beings and to know what would be beneficial to them. So, now, was Manjushri really kind of a little scared of Vimalakirti? No, I don't think so. But I think they thought, this man is my equal, if not more so. Why go see him? You know what I'm saying? I mean, why go? And asking such a pedestrian question as, are you well? So they're reluctant, but they will play their part. Okay. Now, remember, there's this great assembly of all these enlightened beings and everybody. Well, when they hear Manjushri, the prince of bodhisattvas, is going to go and have it out with call on Vimalakirti, nobody wants to miss this. This is sort of like what? I don't know, what could it be like? Like everybody wanted to watch the debate last night, but even more so. I mean, last Tuesday, watching the debate. Everybody wants to go watch the debate. Well, different times, These days, if somebody knew that Manjushri was calling on Vimalakirti, maybe 10 people would show up in Tampa, right? Maybe more. But in those days, great assemblies. So this great crowd goes to Vimalakirti's house. Now, of course, Vimalakirti, knowing what the Buddha was up to, he knew that Manjushri was coming with his numerous attendants. So he magically emptied his house of everything except the bed which he was laying on. Now, there are many interpretations on this. Even the doorkeeper disappeared. If you think about most of us, most human beings, they have their things that help define them. They have all the furnishings of their house. They have all the artifacts they've purchased over the years. They have their clothes and the way they dress. They have their books, you know what I mean? You know how we have all these things to identify us, and kind of let other people know who we are? You see, when people come to our house. But can you imagine inviting a vast assemblage of all these incredible people over and having an empty house? Nothing, right? Nothing. No furnishings, no art on the wall, no servants, and he was, just him alone in a bed. So again, I think he's demonstrating his, he had no fear of showing up naked. Now, it didn't say that he was naked, but he had no fear of showing up naked. He didn't have to put on a show or impress anybody to let them know. He was quite willing to encounter, Manjushri and this whole assemblage just as an old man in bed. So I think that's quite wonderful. And Vimalakirti does not engage in pleasantries. Right? He is not a man of small talk, is he? Which is again very interesting. Wherever he showed up, he only showed up to help people, to benefit people. Right? And I'm sure if he had to make small talk to make connections, he probably would, right? But there was a purpose, to create relationships so he could utilize that relationship to be of benefit to people. But he was always, but he wasn't like most of us where creating the relationship and, because most human beings are needy. They want something from other people. They want positive regard. They want to be liked. They want to be thought worthy of. They're lonely, so they want connection. So most of us approach relationship, from this sense of deficiency or neediness. But Manjusri didn't do that at all. He only approached his interaction with all beings, how can he help them? And most importantly, how could he help them wake up? And so, of course, now, who's coming to greet him but all these enlightened beings, right? This entourage of enlightened beings. So he's not going to make small talk. He doesn't have to connect to them. So Vimalakirti sees Manjusri, comes into the house, and he says, Manjusri, welcome, welcome, you're very welcome. There you are, without any coming. You appear without any seeing. You are heard without any hearing. So it's sort of like from a Dharma combat point of view, he throws down the gauntlet, you see. He doesn't live in duality. Most people live in duality. It's like, I see you. You see? You came from there. You are going there. You see, we experience, ordinary people experience everything in duality of, with time and space and past and present and future and coming and going and, But in modern parlance of Eckhart Tolle, it's, the eternal now. He lives there, right? So, like you see me now, I see all you now. But to even suppose that you came from somewhere, I have to create a thought that you came from somewhere. To imagine you're going somewhere, I have to create a thought, you see. But actually, in reality, what I see and what you see is we're here right now. So this is what he says, here you are, and there's no coming, right? Because here you are. And there's no going because here you are. So you're just here. And even to say here is to posit something that doesn't really exist, because all our true experience is really happening outside of time and space in this, for want of a better word. And then Manjusri, getting the drift. Householder, it is as you say, who comes, comes not. Who goes, goes not. Because why? Because who come is not known to come, who goes is not known to go. What appears is finally not to be seen. Not to be seen. See, if I say I see you, I'm turning the experience into what? Words. Right? See, we already see each other. See, the knowing that we're seeing each other precedes words or concept, you see. So Manjusri says, yeah, no words. And then, after they've had their little Dharma fun, just to kind of, it's sort of like these are the way great bodhisattvas kind of identify themselves to each other. They have these little repartees. Oh, so it's very clear we're all just here. Right? No past, no future, no coming, no going, no outside of time and space. This is where we're meeting. And then he says, Manjusri says, how's your condition? Is it tolerable? Is it livable? Are your physical elements disturbed? You're getting sicker? You're getting better? The Buddha's asking about you. He wants to know whether you have any discomfort, if you're distressed, if you're cared for, And then he says, householder? And where did this sickness come from? Interesting. How long will it continue? How can it be alleviated? Listen to what Vimalakirti says. It's a very famous line. He says, Manjusri, my sickness comes from ignorance and the thirst for existence, and it will last as long as do the sicknesses of all living beings. Were all living beings to be free from sickness, I would not be sick. So when he says, my illness comes from ignorance and the thirst, this comes from what's called the 12 links, but basically it's the Buddhist psychological schema of how mind and consciousness manifest in the physical world. Okay, and it's because, in one sentence or less, it's because beings have misidentified, no longer identify with their true mind, and identify with the objects of their senses that they then desire and thirst. They are always propelled into the world of physicality. They're always propelled into the world of desire and yearning and attachment and aversion. Right? And it's because we have all entered this world of attachment, of aversion, of greed and anger and fear and desire and all that. It's because all our kind of composites are all in distress, because we don't live in the ease of our natural mind. Therefore, that contributes to the imbalance, and therefore it's sickness. Okay. So he says, on the one hand, he's saying that's where it comes from, but I'm also sick because I live with them, and they're sick. It's like, if any of us ever think, that we're an island unto ourselves, all we need is a good pandemic, like we have with COVID, to go, well, we're all in this together. You know what I mean? I mean, even with the people I don't like, we're all in this together. And we all get healthy together or we stay sick together. Were all beings to be free from sickness, I would not be sick. Why? Because Manjusri, for the Bodhisattva, the world consists only of living beings, and sickness is inherent in the world of living beings. Is that true? Yeah. So he says, because as a Bodhisattva, I have entered and I fully participate in the world of human beings, therefore, I will be sick. And when all beings are no longer sick, I will no longer be sick. And he gives the example. When the only son of a merchant is sick, both his parents become sick on account of the sickness of their son. And the parents will suffer as long as their only son doesn't recover from his illness. Right? Everybody's been a parent, right? If your child is suffering, you suffer for them and you want them to get well. Also, there's a good chance you may catch their illness. It's kind of right. So he says, in the same way, bodhisattvas love all beings as if they were their only child, and yet they become sick when they are sick, and they get cured when they are cured. And you ask me, Manjusri, whence comes my sickness? The sickness of the bodhisattva arises from their great compassion. It's kind of wonderful. Later on, if we have time, we'll see if we can get through. There's a wonderful chapter, and you can read it on your own, where all these bodhisattvas in some very pure realm, where all they ever hear are the sounds of the Dharma being taught, and there are these wonderful smells and aromas. They live in this blissful land. Great bodhisattvas just dwelling in pure awareness and all the beautiful things. And then they hear about this great bodhisattva, both Shakyamuni Buddha, and they go, wow. Now, because they kind of, it's sort of like the Greek gods would look down from, their Olympian heights and see mortal beings. And it's like the bodhisattvas, look across the galaxies and see what's going on Earth and go, wow. Like Shakyamuni, he is a great Buddha. Because look where he lives. I mean, we live, it's like we live in the penthouse. We live in the penthouse suite. It's like all of a sudden they've come over to Nebraska and they go, wow, something different over there. So, So because the bodhisattvas have vowed to benefit all beings and to free all beings from their delusions, they will catch the diseases of human beings. So that's why we're sick. Anybody want to know why we get sick? Because we've entered the human realm. We interact with human beings. And we catch their illnesses. Now, then, I'm just picking and choosing. So then Manjusri says to Vimalakirti, how should a bodhisattva console another bodhisattva who is sick? Right? So if you go to the sick bed of a bodhisattva, what should you say to them? And he says, and it's very interesting the way he does it. He should tell them that the body is impermanent, but should not exhort them to renunciation or disgust. You see, because traditional, what might be called, the Hinayana path or the path of the elders was, oh yeah, the body's a magnet for sickness, right? Renounce it. And he says, yeah, you can mention to them the body's impermanent, but don't exhort them to renounce it or be disgusted by it. You can tell them, yeah, having a body is sometimes miserable, but don't encourage them to find solace in liberation. Like there's no need to get away from it, or to use spiritual practice as an escape. A lot of people use meditation, spiritual practice as an escape from. And he says, never tell a bodhisattva that. You can acknowledge to them, yeah, it's not easy having a body. Is that true? Is it easy having a body? No, these bodies are a source of suffering often, a source of joy, pleasure, but ultimately a source of suffering. And then it's going to let us down, right? Sickness, old age, and death. What a letdown, right? You know what I mean? After all we've done for it, right? Fed it 3 times a day, bathed it, got it new clothes every year, took care of it, took it to the gym, and right? And look at all the things we did for it. It's still going to let us down, right? Not grateful, is it? Not a lot of gratitude. So he goes on like that. So don't be distressed. And then he basically says all these good things. Then he says, all right, so after he goes through and he basically tells him, yeah, you can point everything out about a body, but it's never to get them to want to do anything but other than to be in a body and to use it and work with it. Because it really is, when a bodhisattva takes on a body, right, it manifests the possibility for all of us that we can become awakened, that we can transform, that we can heal in this very life, in this very body, in this very condition. So that's what bodhisattvas do. You see, and the reason it's kind of belabored in this text, because it's an alternate vision to the renunciate path, which was, It's a veil of suffering. Renounce it. Get away from it. Bodhisattva path, it's a veil of suffering. Stay in it. Transform it. Because these are your children. These are your children. You don't leave them. You don't abandon them. Right? You stay with them and help them. So then Manjushri says, noble sir, how should a sick bodhisattva control his own mind? Okay, so the first one was, how does a bodhisattva console another bodhisattva or talk to another bodhisattva? In this case, we can think of a bodhisattva, somebody on the path too. How about their own mind? Manjusri, a sick bodhisattva, should control his own mind with the following considerations. And then again, it sort of repeats that sickness arises from total involvement in the process of misunderstanding from beginningless time. It arises from passions that result from unreal mental constructions. But then he takes a very interesting turn. Okay. So again, why are we sick? We're sick because in our delusions we have created this physical form that is not in harmony with reality. It is out of sync, out of joint. The parts of ourselves are in conflict with us. Our minds are in conflict. We nurture wholesome things, but we nurture poisonous things within our own body-mind. So therefore, this is what happens. But then he says, but the passions arise from unreal mental constructions and health. Hence, ultimately, nothing is perceived which can be said to be sick. So now he's getting into very important for us. There is no self in the body, and there's no I that can be said to be sick, that can be apprehended. Therefore, thinking I, aggregate as many things. Anyhow, what do you do when you're sick? Usually when we're sick, when we're not feeling well, whether we're physically in discomfort or whether we're in pain, we have a strong sense of I am suffering. Everybody know that? That one? Right. And some of us are more stoic in our suffering. Some of us are just whiners and complainers, right? We're all, and we're variations on a theme. So we all have a different way of, but basically, we are very, and psychologically it's often felt that when people sick, when they're sick, people kind of regress. They become more dependent and want to be taken care of, like that, right? More childlike. So he says, yes, because when we're sick, there's a strong sense that I am sick, right? Not that my body is sick, but that I, that I am fine. My mind is fine. There's nothing sick about my mind, okay? It's just that my body is sick. But we have a strong sense of I am sick because we so identify with the body. Is that true? Yeah, we all know that, yeah. I am sick. I'm very sick. I'm sick of being sick. I don't want to be sick. I don't like being sick. Anybody know that whole variations on a theme? I. Yeah, we take our sickness very personal, right? We think it's unfair that we're sick. Why? Why do we think it's unfair? Because we had all these plans. Can you believe it? I mean, and this body is getting sick or hurts or something. You know what I mean? It was it's outrageous. So when we're sick, the I, the sense of self, can be very strong. So what the Buddha says is, a practitioner, when they're sick, they look into their mind to apprehend. There seems to be somebody who says they're sick, somebody who's in discomfort. That's not that the body is in discomfort. It's that I am in discomfort. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? And the practice then is to examine that, to look for that self that says, I am sick, I am not well, I am sick of being sick. See, there seems to be something there, doesn't there? Everybody know what I'm talking about? There seems to be something there that has its own identity outside of our body, right? Because it says, I am sick, or I am sick of being sick, or I don't like what my body is doing because I had plans, and my body was supposed to just take me there, you see, and feel good. Right? So the I is very strong when we're sick. So he says, use that opportunity to really examine your own mind, your own body, to ascertain, is that I? Where is that I? Furthermore, one should understand thoroughly the conception of oneself as a separate thing by thinking. Just in the case of like conception of self, so the conception of a thing is also a misunderstanding. And this misunderstanding is also a grave sickness. So the ego is not only a sense of, like we think of it as a solid kind of me, but we also think about it that in its egoistic way, it has a right to own and claim everything else, including its body, for itself. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So the self is not only this intrinsic belief that I am a separate, extant, existent thing, but that also I control other things, or it controls other things. You see, so all of this sense of power, power over our bodies. Does anybody have any idea? I mean, does anybody here think they actually run their body? I mean, the body is amazing. Have you ever seen these? I'm sure you all have these kind of pictures of what inside tissues and organs. I mean, it's just like a universe in there, isn't it? How many cells are there in the body? What? Billions of cells, just in our one body. And they all work together. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They all create organs and tissues and muscles and central nervous systems, and they all work together, and we don't have a clue. Do we? No, I mean, we can have all kinds of theories, but I mean, we, scientists, they study it and come up with conclusions. The body doesn't study anything, does it? It knows how to do it. It didn't read the manual. I mean, it's amazing, right? And yet we say, this is my body. Like we have a clue to how it runs, or can really, other than, we can take care of it. We can try to do things that are good for it. We can try not to do things that are harmful for it, right? But that's really the limit of our ability to affect it, right? I mean, it is on its own trajectory in this lifetime. Is that true? And yet we say what? My body. But it's when you look a little deeper, it's really not like that at all. So the sixth bodhisattva should tell, and again I'm skipping around, so please, on your own, read it if you'd like. The sixth bodhisattva should tell himself or herself, just as my sickness is unreal and non-existent, so the sicknesses of all living beings are unreal and non-existent. Now, when Buddhists talk about real, not real, they mean real in any permanent, solid way. In other words, whatever has arisen in our body has a temporary manifestation. But everything is in the process of changing. Nothing is solid, nothing is permanent. So many causes and conditions and variables at play, So the idea that somehow like sickness is not a thing, is it? Right? If you look for the sickness in your body, what can you find? Do you find a thing called sickness? Anybody ever look in their body? What do you find? Has anybody ever found a thing called sickness? Like, if somebody dies of what? Let's say they die of heart disease. When they do an autopsy, are they going to find some thing called a heart disease? No, they'll find what? What will they find? What? Plaque. Yeah. And is that plaque a solid thing? But plaque is also made up of stuff. That's made up of stuff. That's made up of stuff. That's made up of stuff that the body is made of. I mean, it's so what he's saying is even to think that such a thing as sickness is a solid, it's not like that. Everything is made up of many other things. This is because of that, everything interbeing, interdependence. That this is a very different way of looking at our bodies, ourselves. Nothing is solid, nothing's permanent, nothing, it's a very different world. So when the self claims ownership and identity, it is basically separating itself from the vast unfolding and interpenetration of life. So, in thinking this way, the Bodhisattva arouses great compassion toward all beings without falling into sentimental compassion. This is a very interesting thing. He says the Bodhisattvas, when they see beings caught up in their delusions, they have a great compassion that they're totally misperceiving reality and causing themselves such more suffering. But they don't get caught up in sentimental compassion. And he says, the great compassion that strives to eliminate the accidental passions does not conceive of any life in living beings. Because great compassion that falls into sentimentality only exhausts the bodhisattva in his reincarnations. But the great compassion which is free of involvement with sentimentality, purposive views, does not exhaust the bodhisattva of all reincarnations. It's a mind free of involvement. So, what do you think sentimental compassion is? I mean, sentiment involves what? Feeling, emotion, sentiment. So he says, Bodhisattva's compassion is not sentimental. Anybody ever have sentimental compassion? What is sentimental compassion? What does that mean to you? Huh? Yeah, or, my heart breaks. My heart breaks for you. Mushy, my heart breaks for you. You see, sentimental. And he says this wears bodhisattvas out. Because bodhisattvas are here to liberate beings. Right? And their great compassion manifests because they see that beings have the capacity to be free of all their suffering and delusions, but because of their ignorance, right, they don't. So the Bodhisattva's compassion is for this fundamental state that is the fundamental cause of all the sicknesses, mental and physical, that beings experience. The Bodhisattva doesn't get caught up in sentimentality. Is that clear? Does that sound a little harsh? It doesn't mean, remember, the Bodhisattva. Okay, so I'm a nurse and I work in the ER. Does my heart break for everybody who comes in? What do you think? Why not? Yeah, because the nurse is there to what? To help. He or she is very clear why they're there. They're there to help beings. That's their great compassion. Right? They don't need to go around telling everybody, oh, my heart breaks for you. Right? They don't have to cry every time somebody comes in. Right? And it's not because they're, callous or indifferent, or they're, suffering from burnout. It's not like that. It's because the whole reason they're there is because of their compassion. And once they're there, they just do it. Is that clear? They don't get into sentimentality. Because as it says here, it would just wear them out. Do we want to get do we want to wear out? See, right, in the helping fields, it's called what? It's like a big thing. What? Burnout. But why do people burn out? It's not from compassion, it's from sentimentality. It's because they carry around the emotionality. You see? They don't see clearly. Who comes to a hospital? Anybody ever really felt great, really felt healthy, and said, I think I'm going to go check myself into the hospital for a while? Right? Steve's a doctor. Is that what happens? They're just lined up at intake, just, feeling great, want to spend a week or two in the hospital? No. You would say, this person's not healthy. Yes. Right. All right. Who shows up in the hospital? Sick people. Who shows up in this world? I'll let you think about that. Okay. So, as the Buddha declares, it is not possible for one who is bound themselves to deliver others from their bondage. Yeah. If we want to deliver other people from their bondage, we have to be free of our own bondage. Then we can go help them. To liberate. Therefore, the Bodhisattva should participate in liberation and should not participate in bondage. Bondage to our delusion, bondage to our attachment to views, bondage to our, delusive, unhealthy emotionality. All the things, that we're in bondage to. We want to be free, don't we? Bodhisattvas are free beings. They're free to respond and to help and to take care of. Right? They're not acting from sentimentality, they're acting from wisdom, and they're acting from their great compassion. Manjushri, thus should the sick bodhisattva consider things. Their wisdom is the consideration of body, mind, and sickness as impermanent, empty, and selfless. Their liberative technique again is Thurman's translation of upaya, which is usually, skillful means, methodology, right? Consists of not exhausting themselves by trying to avoid all physical sickness, right? We just accept, to take on a human body, to be willing to enter the world of sick human beings. Yeah, we're going to get sick. Is that true? Yeah. Right? It's like a parent taking on, the care of a child, or a teacher, taking on the charge of the classroom. Well, you're going to have sick kids coming up. Good chance you may get sick, right? But people do that, don't they? It's really wonderful. Just ordinary people do that. Anyhow, there's lots of good stuff. Next chapter, again, and then I'll take some questions. Remember Sariputra? Poor Sariputra? Remember he was thrown at the butt of... Well, he's back again. So, right? So remember, they were all there, and, watching Manjusri and Vimalakirti have this great dialogue, right? Shariputra's there. And he thinks to himself, oh my God, there's no furniture in this house. Where are all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the great beings? Where are they going to sit? See, Sariputra, very practical. Right? So that's what he's concerned about. Vimalakirti could read the thoughts of the Venerable Sariputra and said, this is a great line, also a famous line, Reverend Sariputra, did you come here for the sake of the Dharma, or did you come here for the sake of a chair? Vimalakirti does not suffer fools, does he? He's quite a guy. And Sariputra replied, I came for the sake of the Dharma, not for the sake of a chair. And then he does a long where he talks about that. The one who is interested in the Dharma is not interested even in their own body, much less a chair. And he goes through all the things that they should not be interested in. Yeah, so does that sound familiar? Why do we come to the Dharma? Why do we come to the Dharma? Why do we come to a spiritual path? Anybody have any idea? Well, but we could stay home and suffer. We don't have to come to the Dharma. Brian said we suffer, but I said, yeah, well, anybody can suffer. We come to the Dharma to suffer more. Why do we come to the Dharma? To be liberated. Thank you, Yana. To be liberated. We want to be free. Isn't that true? We want to be free of suffering. We want to be free of delusion. We want to be free of all the things that inhibit us and keep us bound, right? Isn't that we want to be free? We want to, right? And yet, look at the things that we're concerned about. We're concerned about what? What are we concerned about? Well, we're concerned about work. Yeah, that's true. We have lots of worldly concerns. But even when we come for the Dharma, we come to the center, we care about what? The AC. It's too hot, it's too cold. All right? I got to find myself the right cushion. Got to find a cushion that's just right for me. Right? Don't we do things like that? Right? We go on retreat and food was a little, I like this one. Wasn't too good today. Don't we do things like that? Yeah. Right. We find fault with the teacher, all this stuff, we just come. So Vimalakirti is saying that, it's like, when Shariputra says, where are they all going to sit? That is symbolic of coming for the Dharma and yet bringing all our worldly concerns. Right? Hey, how come I didn't get an outer boy or an outer girl? Right? Right? How come nobody thanked me? You know what I'm saying? You know how now again, I'm not saying it's not good to thank people, but you see, we come with our worldly ego mind. That's what it means. Like, where's everybody going to sit? I mean, here you have these two great enlightened beings kind of really talking the highest truth. And what's Shariputra? He's looking around going, gee, maybe we ought to rent some chairs or something. Maybe we make a quick call and rent some chairs. Now again, we could certainly say, well, that's kind, right? Thoughtful. But is this why we came to the Dharma? So we come, we pick and choose, we do this, we that. Things aren't just the way we want it. You see what I'm saying? And like in our Great Cloud Refuge retreat, can you believe it? We have, because we want to get as many people in, we have what? Bunk beds. And you know what that means? What? Somebody's going to be on top. Some people don't like to be up top. It is inconvenient, isn't it? Going up and down those steps. Right? The bathrooms, the rooms don't have bathrooms. Which means what? That's what we get hung up on. Right? That's what we get hung up on. That's a we. Like we forget. Why did I come here? What am I seeking? I forget sickness, old age, and death. This whole thing's could be over, tonight. Right? We forget. And we look around and go, hey, how come he's got no furniture here? Sit on the floor, right? Great beings are talking, you feel happy you're just there. Sit on the floor. Anyhow, great line. So I could read more about, it's all about the inconceivable liberation. Next chapter, chapter 7, is a lot of fun. Shariputra gets totally turned around in this one, poor guy. And there's a lot of humor in this. But before that, Manjusri says to the Vimalakirti, "Good sir, how should a bodhisattva regard all living beings?" And then this is a very famous. A bodhisattva, Manjusri, should regard all living beings as a wise man regards the reflection of the moon in the water, or as magicians regards things created by magic, like a face in the mirror, like a water of a mirage, the sound of an echo, clouds in the sky, like the previous moment of a ball of form, like the appearance and disappearance of a bubble of water, like a flash of lightning in the dark. And he goes on and on and on and on. Now, this is very important, right? Because who are we interacting with all our whole life? You're people, living beings, right? And so this is a really wonderful question. All right. So, how should I look at all these beings that I'm interacting with, right? And as a bodhisattva, how should I look at all these beings that I've made the vow to liberate from their suffering and to help in any way I can? How should I look at them? And he says what? Transient, impermanent, not solid, like a mirage. A mirage appears solid, right? You think something's real, like an hallucination, like a magician, right? Magicians make things appear, but they know they're not real. Is that true? Clouds appear in the sky, but they're not solid things. The reflection of the moon in the water is not the moon, it's just a reflection. So he goes through all these, to basically say we should see all beings as being without a solid, self-existent core. Okay. Just temporary manifestations. Now, when do we really know that everybody that we've been attached to in our life has always been a temporary manifestation? When is that totally revealed to us? When they die. Right? And I hope all of us have the experience of being the present of somebody when they're dead and dying. It's the truth of the impermanent nature of this life is totally revealed. Because when that person dies, something very incredible happens. We look at them, and it's still them. Right? That's the person. That's a person I've always identified with such and such a name, and yet they don't answer to their name anymore, do they? When we shake them, they don't wake up, do they? No. And you realize whatever they were was never the body. Because the body is still here, right in front of me. There it is. But whatever it is that animated them is gone. Right? The material manifestation is still here. But the immaterialness of their awareness, their consciousness, their being, that's gone. I always thought they were their body. I didn't realize they were just a bubble. Right? Just a mirage. Precisely thus, Manjusri does a bodhisattva who realizes ultimate selflessness consider all beings. But then Manjusri, remember, he's very bright. He asked the obvious question. Noble sir, if a bodhisattva considers all beings in such a way, right? They're a bubble, they're a mirage. How does he generate great love toward them? You see? You know what I mean? I mean, like if I look at, and I go, he, she, they're just a mirage. They're not real. They're just a temporary manifestation of causes and conditions, right? There's nothing really intrinsically there at all. You see? I mean, it's such a wonderful question. Well, then how do you generate love for them? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like what? Do you fall in love with a beautiful bubble? An ice sculpture? Knowing it's going to melt, you'd know. Manjusri, So he says, how do we generate this great love to them? Manjusri, when a bodhisattva considers all living beings in this way, the way he just said, Vimalakirti says, one thinks to oneself, just as I have realized the Dharma, so I should teach it to them. Therefore, the bodhisattva generates the love that is truly a refuge for all living beings. A love that is peaceful because it is free of grasping. A love that is not feverish because it's free of all passions. A love that accords with reality because it is equanimous in all three times, past, present, future. It's without conflict because it's free of the violence of passions, of attachment. The love that is imperturbable, that is firm, unbreakable, pure. And he goes on and on and on and on. It's a different love, isn't it? The love, because the bodhisattva has such great compassion, because sentient beings are lost in their misidentifications. They're lost in their delusions. They're lost in their thoughts and conceptualizations. His great love manifests by wanting to free them. It's a different kind of love. There's no attachment. There's not wanting anything, needing anything. That's the way we love, right? That's worldly love. So, that's again why they say it's a compassion that's free of all sentimentality. Our love wants to hold on, wants something in return. Right? Again, that's not negative, that's worldly love. But this love of a bodhisattva is different. It's also not partial. Did you remember he gave one of the disciples a hard time, because he was always begging, in the poorest parts of town, and he wouldn't go to the wealthy. He said, no, that's not the way you do it. It's impartial. We're here to liberate all beings. We're here to share the Dharma with all beings. Don't be partial. So anyhow, there's this great dialogue going on. And guess what? There's a certain goddess who lived in Shariputra's house. And she heard this dialogue. And she was delighted, overjoyed. And she manifested herself in a material body. So she's a goddess, but she can manifest in a material body. And she showered the great spiritual heroes with heavenly flowers. So we'll leave it here, because what happens next is fascinating and very enlightening. And it involves our old friend Shariputra, who once again just steps right into it. So, we have a few minutes, 8 to be exact. Questions? Any questions about what's been shared tonight or the other weeks? Anything just about these teachings? Or again, I'm just trying to pick out some parts of them and trying to make them, relatable to our life as lay people. Again, a lot of it is, as we say, the deep end of the pool in terms of Dharma. But I think it's all understandable. It may take time to realize it and to live it, but I think it's understandable. So are there any questions? If anybody at home has any questions, just raise your hand. Anybody in the hall? Anything? Or is just the hour getting late? But in anything, this is a very unique teaching. So, very special for lay people. Okay. Then I'll just continue for another couple of minutes, just to go into the story a little bit.
If
So the goddess...
Mauricio had a question.
Oh, there's a question. Oh, Mauricio. Can always count on Mauricio. Yes, Mauricio.
Do you want me to chat it? Read the chat?
What's his question?
Well, it looks more like a statement, actually.
What?
It looks more like a statement.
What's Mauricio's statement?
I find these to be similar to those in the era who were looking to liberate people from suffering.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you, Mauricio. Yeah, so there's this goddess, lives in Manjusri's house. She usually can't be seen, like most goddesses, they don't show themselves easily. But she manifests, and she throws some heavenly flowers. Now, when the flowers fell on the bodies of the bodhisattvas, they fell off onto the floor. But when they fell on the bodies of the great disciples, again, these are all renunciates, monks and nuns, they stuck to them and did not fall. These great disciples shook the flowers hard and even tried to use their magical powers, but they couldn't shake the flowers off. They couldn't shake them off. And then the goddess says to the Venerable Shariputra, Reverend Sariputra, why do you shake these flowers? Sariputra replied, Goddess, these flowers are not proper for religious renunciates like myself, so we're trying to shake them off. What do you think's going on here? Remember? She throws these heavenly flowers, they fall on the bodhisattvas, and they just fall off them onto the ground. But to the monks and nuns, the disciples, they get stuck. Can't shake them off. What's going on here? Anybody have an idea? Yes, Brian.
Seems that it's pointing out that when we renounce outwardly, we may not actually be renouncing inwardly. And so then when we get out into the world, we might be easily attached to what we encounter.
Yeah, he's pointing out that the bodhisattva doesn't get stuck. This is acceptable, this is unacceptable. Right? But a renunciate, a monks and nuns, has lots of vows, can't do. Reminds me of that, famous Zen story. Again, monks are not supposed to ever touch a woman, right, or be touched by a woman. They're renunciates. They've taken vows of celibacy. You probably know this story. The two monks, and they're on pilgrimage, or they're walking somewhere, and they come to a stream or a creek. It's kind of overflowed, and there's a woman on one side, and she can't get across. So one of the monks picks her up, carries her across, sets her down the other side, and the two of them continue on. The one who didn't pick her up, he's seething for hours. Anything ever happened to you? You just kind of boils around inside. Somebody does something. You can see that's what he's doing. The whole rest of the day is just so. I don't know. They get to wherever they were going, and it's nighttime, and finally he can't contain himself, and he goes, "I can't believe you did what you did. You're a monk. You're never supposed to touch a woman, much less pick her up and carry her. I can't believe you did that." And the monk looks at him and he goes, "It's interesting. I put her down 8 hours ago and you're still carrying her around." That's kind of a variation on a theme. On that note, I'll bid you all good night. We'll share the merit, any benefit that may have come to us this evening from our study and reflection on the Sutra of Vimalakirti. May it be shared equally to all whom we encounter, whether near or far away, and may its effects ripple continuously to aid in the healing transformation of the world. Thank you, everyone.